Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight on a long lost, discontinued gray cap creed, and it is called Apicia. And this is thanks to one of my perfume god people. Thank you very much. You know what? Let's just do another spray because this thing only lasts a couple hours anyways. So I've been wearing it here for a couple hours. So I guess so I can actually smell something. Let's try again. So Apicia is one of the rare vaulted creeds that everyone goes crazy for. And it came out in 1965, if you believe Fragrantica or Base Notes. And it came out in 1975, if you believe Parfumo. Both of which I am very suspect about because this fragrance smells nothing like any 1960s or any 1970s masculine fragrance I've ever smelled for men. This is marketed towards men, by the way. And it's funny because if anyone actually says that on any of the hardcore, databases, the fragrance databases, they get mercilessly attacked. I was reading some back and forth between some of the different people commenting, and it's funny. One guy was like, just shut up. Just shut up. Like his ego was hurt because the guy was saying something bad about Apicia. But anyways, let me put it this way. If I paid $500 for this and this arrived and I had never smelled Apicia, and then it shows up and I spray, and this is the first thing I smell, I would be pissed. I would be livid, let's put it that way. Not because necessarily it's a bad fragrance, but because it isn't enough fragrance to warrant the whole creed thing, along with the crazy price tag that's being asked. Now, maybe if you had got this if you knock a zero off and you get it for $50, sure, okay. This will be a cool little collector's piece kind of thing. But it's funny because some folks are like, oh, you can't talk about money when you talk about fragrances. You just need to talk about the fragrance. But how can you only talk about the fragrance when it's a $500 fragrance? I'm assuming it's about $500. And so, you have to bring money into the game because that's part of the whole equation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a rare, hard to find discontinued creed. People would still have it. So, as a collector, all right, I think it's important to talk about money. So for me, this fragrance is a $50 fragrance. I would spend $50 of my hard-earned money on this fragrance. Would I spend more than that? No, I don't think I would. Hail to the no. I don't think I would. And here's the thing. The way that the citruses blend in the opening, if you really want an example of the first thing that came to mind, and there's not very much that comes to mind with this, but there is a fragrance that Creed did from 1970. Again, take all of these years with a grain of salt because some of these early days of Creed are even more suspect and insane than some of the stuff, that came later on when there was at least kind of a semblance of a truth, sort of, kind of. But some of the early days was the true Wild Wild West, We made this for Marie Antoinette or whatever the hell. So Genghis Khan asked for us to make this bespoke fragrance for him, but really we just vaulted it and we're allowing you to buy it as the general public. Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. But Selection Vert came out in 1970. I have a decant. I will review it one of these days. It's definitely much more minty than Apicia, but it has this sort of patented Creed citrus thing, you could say, in the opening that smells very similar. I think it's a mixture of bergamot. I think there's probably some lemon or maybe even a little bit of lime in here. And I also pick up neroli and Apicia. No one talks about, well, first of all, there's only one review on it, and that's because my Mickers took 3 minutes to review it before, he passed away. So rest in peace to my Mickers. I really liked some of his reviews. But really, this doesn't deserve more than a 3-minute review. I'm not going to lie. A lot of times I get up here and I'm like, this is going to be a fast review. And then I talk forever. Well, this is probably going to be a fast review because there's not very much to say about it. It's a very simple fragrance, but I do pick up citruses. I think neroli adds a little bit of freshness, although not many people talk about that. There's definitely something very fresh smelling in here. If you want a comparison, imagine Selection Vert, which smells a little bit like Jacques Fat green water. I think it's Creed's take on like green water, if you will. And just imagine adding a little bit of spiciness. They say there's clove in here. I don't pick up like a traditional clove, not like a 1980s hardcore clove you'd find in like a big fougere makeup or nothing like that, okay? it's just kind of like this generic spiciness. And just imagine, for comparison purposes, you took that spiciness. Maybe there's a little bit of the citruses in the top, as I said. Maybe a touch of green, just a touch of something green. We could talk about what those somethings are in a minute, but and mix it with like a version of Andy Towers' L'Air de Alpes Suisses. I would take Andy Towers' L'Air de Alpes Suisses a million times over this, but just imagine you're kind of mixing Creed's Selection Vert with a little bit of that sort of fresh feeling of the air, you know? Andy Tower did the air over the Swiss mountains. Creed was trying to do with Apicia this air over a forest feeling, but I think they failed miserably personally. This is probably just one of the most boring Creeds I think I've ever smelled. And Creed has some boring fragrances. There are some people that really accuse Creed of being boring. Usually Creed has like these high smelling ingredients though. You know, the ambergris here, or let's just say Creed's ambergris in general normally smells very natural and, you know, all that stuff, even though many people claim it's not real ambergris, it's an ambergris accord, which that's another thing that'll get you into a fight online if you start to say that. But I could totally see that after smelling real ambergris fragrances from, you know, the Russian Atoms and the Ensar Ouds and all that stuff. I could totally see Creed's ambergris being an ambergris accord, and there's nothing wrong with that. But many people get very defensive about it. But this one smells even less natural than some of the other Creeds that I've came across that I've discussed on the channel. The spices here are nowhere near enough, especially for a fragrance that, if you believe Fragrantica, so here's what Fragrantica says. Here's the write-up. Unfortunately, it's not the true write-up, which I would have loved to know who they claim this was made for back in the day. But it says, the name Apicia means spicy, which we'll talk about that because that doesn't sound proper either. And then it says, which is a perfect description for this perfume. No, it's not. Excuse me. With its green forest-like note of Russian pine, Apicia brings to mind the particular beauty and joy of winter holidays in a snowy climate. This green, spicy fragrance opens with bergamot and lavender. The middle note is clove. Russian pine forms the base. Now, have you ever heard of a note listing like that before, where Russian pine forms the base? First of all, I get almost no clove and I get almost no pine. That is a little bit of a problem, boys and girls. I must admit, especially for a fragrance that has 4 notes. One of them is a citrus. And so you can kind of get the idea of how this smells, even if you've never smelled it. Very citrusy, very aromatic, very boring. And, you know, the biggest joke is that Russian pine. And I love when people are like, oh, this is the best pine fragrance I've ever smelled. Really? Have you ever smelled pine? Have you ever smelled pine sol before? Because that smells more piney than this. But they also say, well, Parfumo says it's stone pine, which is maybe just another word for Russian pine, but just an absolute joke to me. My shirt, which is green, probably smells more piney than this. The even bigger joke is that because Russian pine is listed, some people started comparing it to another fragrance that has Russian pine, which is Siberian musk. Get the fuck out of here. If you think that these two smell anything alike, you need your head checked. Your nose, your head, all of it. So absolutely nothing. Like, if you want to smell a proper Russian pine note, try Siberian musk or Russian musk or one of those. Even kind of the green take from Baikal Grease by Areej Dore. Those 3 are perfect. Or just smell polo green, damn it. And that'll take care of your pine affliction if you don't know what pine smells like. But it's definitely not this, I'll tell you that. I get almost no pine. Maybe 2 to 3 hours in, and this is a 2 to 3 hour dry down. Like, maybe if you like twisted your mind into a pretzel and dropped some acid or something, you could start thinking there was pine in here, but I don't know. I mean, you really have to start trying to reach for straws, if you will. Maybe you could make the case that it smells a little bit like the air blowing off of a pine forest, like after it's kind of traveled a ways, but you know, it's just basically this aromatic, fresh, citrusy, boring fragrance that smells like it was made in 1995 instead of 1965. I would probably bet that this was created sometime in the well, I don't know if that's possibly true, but it smells like it was created in the 90s. Let's put it that way. It smells very, very, very fresh, okay? Very, very fresh. Now, to make matters worse, the citruses in this bottle that this came from feel like they're just starting to turn a little bit. You know, when citruses start to turn, the first couple minutes can usually be a little murky. You know, like you're getting the citruses cut with like hydrogen peroxide or maybe like nail polish remover or something like that, along with the citrus notes. So Creed's kind of claim to fame is they do citruses and fresh notes beautifully. You know, that's kind of one of their that's one of the things that they do very, very well is fresh fragrances that are very easy to wear. And so having the citruses being a little bit murky could be a little bit of a put off. Now, to be fair, this sample, which was very generously gifted to me, could be from a bottle that's 50 years old, if you believe base notes, or Fragrantica. And if you believe Parfumo, or if you think I'm right and it's probably from the 90s, then this could be a 30-year-old bottle. Either way, let's just say it's an old fragrance. So it's long been discontinued. And, you know, this is one of the biggest risks, I think, of buying vintage Creeds is that Creeds tend to turn, from my experience, this is just my experience speaking, but Creeds tend to turn much faster than other fragrances that I've come across. And no, it's not because they use 100% natural ingredients. So to all you Creed heads out there who are like, no, it's not that. It's because they use a lot of fresher and citrus notes. And citrus notes tend to evaporate off your skin faster, but they also, because they're more volatile, but they're also more sensitive. So they're the first thing to turn, right? So when you spray some of these older Creeds, if you kind of get this weird nail polish remover, murky, you know, hydrogen peroxide, kind of cloudy smell, that is usually the citruses turning a little bit. So I think that they're not turned, but I think they're starting to turn. And from this bottle is kind of what it smells like to me. But once everything settles down, give it 10 or 15 minutes, because it doesn't last much longer than that. You kind of get this lavender and clove combination with, I think that there's probably my mystery notes in here, which I always like to guess what notes are in the fragrance that are not listed in the note listing. And if I was creating my own note listing for this, I would probably put maybe a hint of cardamom. And I think that's where the spiciness is coming from much more than the clove, and a hint of tarragon. And it gives it this weird kind of aromatic licorice-like smell because anise, cardamom has this weird green anisic-like smell. Tarragon has this weird green anisic-like smell. And, but honestly, I'm very laissez-faire about the scent. Like, if I never smelled this again, I wouldn't care, to be honest with you. Like, there's some fragrances, like, oh my God, I have to smell that again, or I have to save my sample. Now, I save all my samples in case someone asks me some question a year or two down the line about it, and I'm like, shit, I don't even remember what that smells like. I can pull it out, spray it, and give them an answer. But if I never smelled it again, I wouldn't personally care. Let's put it that way. I think they did use tarragon, though, to try to give it a little bit of this vintage masculine vibe. You know, tarragon gives a little bit of that vintage masculine vibe and feel. And, you know, then they came up with the story about it being created long ago, would be my guess, my best guess at what Olivier Creed did. But that's just my thinking, allegedly. I wish I had the original marketing to this, which said this was actually made for Jesus, and but it was vaulted. So anyways, but he is coming back, so we will unvault it soon. But yeah, the marketing backstory probably was hilarious, but I bet you and I could probably come up with something just as good in 5 to 10 minutes with very little effort. We could be at the bar before sundown. But I do think the meat and potatoes of Apicia is kind of that 1 to 3 hour mark. Like I said, you're not going to get much more than 3 hours anyways. But for me, that's kind of where that cloudy, grimy citrus feel starts to kind of fade away. And but it's not far enough into the dry down where it just disappears like a fart into the wind. And what's interesting is, if you look up the name Apicia, it literally means a spruce, or a spruce forest, if you will. And so it's interesting to me that Creed didn't decide to use any spruce. I mean, spruce is an ingredient used in fragrances. I've discussed it in things like Oriental Velours by Les Indemodables, which is an amazing spruce myrrh combination. And if I could own one Les Indemodables, it would be that. Another fragrance that has spruce that I will be reviewing soon is this Duke Atkinson, which basically I paid like $50 for this instead of $500, and I enjoy this a million times more. I think this is the best Atkinson creation. If you're like a vintage hunter, but you're trying to find stuff that's off the beaten path, yesterday I showed one, and today I'm showing another one. So Duke is amazing, and I will be reviewing this soon. So if you kind of want to get out ahead of things, this is one to look for while it's still potentially cheap. But yeah, I mean, here, let's just look it up, just for shits and grins. Let's see what eBay has these for. eBay Apicia. Okay, I was wrong. It is not $500. It is $600. I just guessed $500. There's one out there, period, and it is $600. Well, $599.99. But of course, you have to pay $9.99 in shipping. Can't have that cutting into your costs. Of course, that wouldn't be fair. $600. So you know, I guess for me, you know, these four notes are supposed to, I don't know, blend into this spruce forest smell. Maybe that's their idea. Maybe that's why they didn't use real spruce. But it just smells very boring, fresh, aromatic, slightly spicy vintage Creed. That is definitely one of the weakest gray caps. I've reviewed some of the gray caps on the channel, you know, and this one just comes across as this kind of slightly bitter, aromatic, herbal thing. Some describe it as astringent. Maybe that could be Creed's ambergris accord. I think it could have benefited from more of that ambergris accord. I think the lack of it here makes the fragrance smell a little cheap. It's well blended. I mean, it is smooth. I will say that. But the forest smell that they were kind of going for, or the air over the forest smell, definitely has this cheap pine sol smell to it. Smooth pine sol, but pine sol nonetheless. And I think that it is one of the least impressive Creeds I've smelled personally. I mean, you can tell that these gray caps were done maybe like in an era before Olivier Creed really got his claws into Pierre Bourdon, because some of them are big hits and some of them are big misses. And I used to say that some of the big hits from the gray cap era, which is what Creed used to call the eau de toilettes. Creed doesn't make any eau de toilettes anymore. All of them are discontinued. But when they used to make eau de toilettes and eau de parfums, the eau de toilettes were cheaper. So they were one of the best values out there if you were trying to buy a Creed, right? So you could get two of my, if I was ranking the gray caps, my favorite of the gray caps is this. There's no markings on this, but trust me, I know what this is. This is Royal English Leather, which if you really want to laugh, go watch my review of Royal English Leather. And the marketing used for Royal English Leather is fucking, I mean, it will do your head in, okay? Let's put it that way. It'll do your head in. They're basically saying that this was created around the time George Washington was roaming the planet. So, anyways, if you'd like to laugh, go check that video out. And that's true Creed marketing, by the way. That's not me just being an asshole and making shit up. That is actually what they were going for. The other one is Acier Aluminum, and I have reviews on both of these. That would be like number one, number two gray cap for me, okay? Oh, I love both of these. These are strong offerings from Creed. Very strong offerings. And you used to be able to get these for very cheap. I think they were like $125 retail or something, like very respectable pricing for a Creed back in the day. Now, I also reviewed Zeste Mandarine Pamplemousse, which I think kind of falls in between the lower tier Creeds, like Apicia is definitely one of the lower tier gray caps, but my most hated I have not reviewed yet, so that will be even worse than this one. And it's called Royal Scottish Lavender. Royal Scottish Lavender, they claim came out in 1856, which, okay. So before Zste, they're claiming. They're also claiming this came out like 100-something years before Zste. So Zste is seen as like the first modern creation. So, I mean, the gall of Creed. To some of the stuff that they say. But anyway, Zeste Mandarin Pamplemousse at least has a proper Creed ambergris in it. Say what you want about it. And I actually really like the honeysuckle thing here. I've got a review of all three of these I mentioned here. Apicia is by far the weakest of all of the gray cap creeds that I've reviewed on the channel, but luckily it is saved by the just horrendous use of lavender and Royal Scottish lavender. And so it is not the worst, I'll tell you that. And I'm still like, the fact that I haven't reviewed Royal Scottish Lavender is only because I don't want it to ever touch my skin again, and yet I have to have it touch my skin again if I want to review it. So I'm in a quandary. But needless to say, Apicia, wrapping this up, this is for the hardcore Creed collectors, you know, the ones who want the bottle for the collection, right? I don't think this is for the average person, where $600 actually means something to them. Like if $600 means something to you, you know, and you're the type of person that's going to wear your fragrances, don't buy this. Let's try this again. Don't buy this. You will be disappointed in Apicia. I really think this is for the hardcore collectors who maybe they don't even care what the juice inside is like. They want the bottle, you know. They want to say, I own a bottle of Apicia online to other people. This is much more of a collector's piece to me. That's how I see Apicia. As I said, if you said, Ramsey, I have a bottle and you can have it for $100, I would probably say no. Maybe I'd say yes just because I think it would be cool to have as a collector's piece, but I wouldn't say yes because I want to wear it. I would say yes because it's just a cool, I love discontinued fragrances, and there's two sides to this hobby. There's the folks who are buying it for the juice and they want to wear it, which is how most of my fragrances are thought of. And then there's people who want it for the collector's side of it, you know? They want the bottle, they want the prestige of saying, hey, I've got this or that discontinued fragrance. And there is that part of that, there is that side of the hobby as well. And who knows, maybe this will sell for $1,000 in a decade. I mean, you know, that's not why I would recommend buying fragrances, but there are people who do that. And so I think this is for the hardcore collectors, kind of where I'm going with this. If you said, Ramsey, you get to save a couple fragrances from your collection from a fire, pick a couple creeds, this will be like one of the last things I picked if I had it. It is very, very bland, very blah, very, doesn't move me at all, you know? And maybe if I read some more of the ridiculous marketing, it would help. But no, I mean, there's nothing in this that gets me excited at all. I think this is very bland, very boring, and very weak. I mean, 3 hours. I mean, if I wore this as my scent of the day, I would just basically have to bathe in it. So, you know, if you're going to spend $600 on that bottle on eBay, every squirt's going to be like $5 or something. And maybe with Creed's atomizers, it'll be like $7.50 a squirt. So anyways, that's kind of my take on it. This is a big pass for me. I very much appreciate my perfume god person sending this my way. Needless to say, this would be a big no-no for me if I was still spending my own money on perfume. Let's put it that way. But I'm glad to get to smell it. I'm glad to get to do a review. There's only one review on it, like I said, and it's from my Mickers, rest in peace. And so, yes, I mean, I'm glad to at least shine a spotlight on this long-lost, discontinued Creed. So if you have experience with it, let me know. I know this is kind of niche fragrance content, if you will. Niche fragrance content for a niche brand, but I like doing these reviews that no one else is going to do. And if only 10% of the people that usually watch click on the video, great, whatever, I don't care. You know, it's still kind of a cool thing to do, to review these long lost fragrances. So anyways, if you have experiences with it, let me know. Love to hear your thoughts. As always, cheers guys. Catch you next time. Bye bye.